The calm before the D.C. storm. The Senate getting back to work this week, the House in session next week, and they're already on the clock. They've got until midnight, January 19th, to come up with a spending plan, or else they'll give us a government shutdown. Let's go to Fox Business Network's Blake Berman with the very latest. Hi, Blake.
It's not like this White House or Congress will be able to ease right into 2018. Right off the bat, they will have to fend off yet again another government shutdown. Before heading out of town for their holiday break, Congress punted the latest spending decisions to January 19th. That's now the deadline to avert the next looming shutdown. The same issues here still remain. Funding levels need to be set, while the debate ensues over money for the border wall and how to treat dreamers, the children who were brought into this country illegally by their parents. The administration has also signaled the president is likely to sign an executive order this month that would allow for rewriting health care rules so that it will be easier to buy health plans at a lower cost because they don't have all of the coverage requirements that are written into the Affordable Care Act. The top agenda item, though, right off the bat will be an infrastructure package, and President Trump does not think that will be too big of a lift.
Infrastructure is by far the easiest. People want it, Republicans and Democrats. We're going to have tremendous Democrat support on infrastructure, as you know. I could have started with infrastructure. I actually wanted to save the easy one for the one down the road. So we'll be having that done pretty quickly.
The administration has called for roughly $200 billion in direct federal spending, with a total package of about $1 trillion through public-private partnerships and other incentives. However, Democrats want to see that direct federal spending number much higher than $200 billion. Trish?
Thanks, Blake. So does President Trump see a highway to work with Democrats in the new year?
My budget proposal includes a massive investment in new federal support for infrastructure. No longer will we allow the infrastructure of our magnificent country to crumble and decay.
I really do believe we're going to have a lot of bipartisan work done, and maybe we start with infrastructure, because I really believe infrastructure can be bipartisan.
And there's new urgency to fix things up across the country in the wake of some major airport fires and, of course, that deadly Amtrak train derailment in Washington state. But even if you can get a deal, can we deal with the cost? Let's go right now to Ashley Pratt, who's not so sure we can, but Blake Rutherford thinks we can't afford to wait any longer here. Blake, why?
Well, I think we've got real infrastructure challenges. I mean, I think it's not a partisan issue in recognizing that we have decaying infrastructure all across the country in red and blue states. We need to come up with a solution. Although I do think it's going to be a tricky situation in light of the tax bill. How do we pay for it is a question we haven't really heard from the president, and Congress hasn't addressed this issue. It's been focused on other things in 2017. We'll see what 2018 looks like.
Yeah, Ashley, you know, it's adding up, right? We better get a lot of economic growth. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to pay the bill here.
Well, and that's part of the problem. You know, it's all fine and nice to say that this isn't a partisan issue, but it is when it comes down to how we go about paying for it. Democrats obviously see this as something that should be funded by the federal government. Republicans will see this as something that is a necessary evil in the sense that it needs to get done, but how do we address it and pay for it? Can it be a public-private endeavor? Can it be something that, you know, companies or localities can invest in and there would be a government incentive to that? And these are all questions that need to be addressed as this moves forward. And what we have seen so far when it comes to legislative priorities, the president has made this something that initially was in his 100-day plan, but this has been pushed back. So 2018, with it being an election year and people seeing their political futures on the line, how does this work for both Democrats and Republicans? Do they want to hand President Trump a win in a midterm election year? Do Republicans want to vote for something that will increase government spending? These are all questions that need to be addressed.
It's going to get tricky. I mean, Blake, will the Democrats play ball on this? Will they work with him because they have argued that they've wanted infrastructure forever? And hey, you're spending other people's money here, so why not get to it? But seriously, I mean, I wonder whether they're willing to work with him on anything, even something they want.
Well, I think time will tell. Let's see what the legislative priority is of the Republican leadership in Congress. They just tacked on several $1 trillion to the debt. So that's going to be a consideration here. The Republicans made that choice. They did it in a partisan way. They didn't involve Democrats. Now the speaker's talking about going after entitlement reform early in 2018. So the president's going to have to step up here and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. If we're going to focus on infrastructure, let's bring Democrats in and let's start having a meaningful conversation. That hasn't happened in the Congress yet. So are Democrats willing to deal? Sure, they've got to be invited to the table. They weren't invited to the table on health care. They weren't invited to the table on tax reform. So we're just going to have to see.
But Ashley, you know, this might be one where he's able to make that crossover. Welfare reform, that is what the speaker wanted as the main agenda item. It's not what the president wants.
Right.
Politically speaking, how does it play out, in your view, for Republicans in 18 if they're out there spending money on infrastructure instead of saving people's tax dollars through some kind of welfare reform?
Trish, you hit the nail right on the head here, because the messaging that's been coming out of the White House are lower taxes and lower limited government messaging. And for them to really take a step here to increase government spending, increase the amount of kind of government reach in some ways with an infrastructure bill, infrastructure spending. This is something that will have repercussions, I think, on Republicans in the 2018 midterms. Now, with that said, there's already going to be questions out there about 2018 being a referendum on Trump's presidency. So he's going to want a legislative win. And if he can work with Democrats on this, I think he will. So I think this is on the president's agenda for that reason, because he, again, doesn't want to see this be a narrative that happens in 2018.
He wants to win, absolutely. Right. And this is one that I think he thinks he can win on, and he thinks would be a boost to the economy. Although I would just caution not to go the way of Obama's infrastructure plan, where we spent $800 billion and really wound up with no growth as a result. So the critical thing for him will be to involve the private sector. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Thanks so much. It's good to see you both, Ashley and Blake.